Hello, everybody in YouTube land. This is Michael Zangara of the 28mm Wargaming Sci-fi channel. And today I'm going to bring you another car series for the game Gaslands. And basically, what we're going to talk about is considerations on the different cars you can select, the type of theme that you could possibly go with, and overall the different eras of automobiles and the different types of race teams. I worked for Napa Auto Parts as a sales guy for about 10 years, so I was part of the car culture thing. And one of the things, because I don't have the book yet, but one of the things I think people should consider is the different styles of cars and how they would be affected in gameplay. Now, I'm still waiting for my book to get here for the Gaslands, but let's talk about construction of the cars, the engine types, braking, and stuff like that, and go by era and culture. So, the first era that I want to start with is street rods. I don't have an example here, but basically what I'm talking about is cars that were designed mainly from the 30s to I'd say till the early 50s. One thing about this car consideration is the stock motors were a lot uh, less horsepower than what is considered the standard today, and a lot less than the muscle cars. Now, there is one great thing about these cars, and let's take a car I know a lot about. I built this car with my father because he's a hot rod guy too, and we both love street rods. And the car that we built was a 1940 Ford Coupe. Okay, now the biggest engine that we could put in there was a 283. Okay, that stock has about 195 horsepower. And you can bore out the heads, adjust the crankshaft. There's a lot of things you can do to it. Put a 4-barrel carburetor on there. For space, you had to move the battery and the fuel pump into the trunk. But the great thing is, we put a 3-speed on the floor, and it was a Ford car, but we made it all Chevy, so we put a lot of Camaro parts as far as like the rear end and Corvette parts for the engine. So we took that 195 horsepower, got it up to about 280 horsepower. Now that doesn't sound like a lot. It's respectable, but with construction of the cars back then, they were solid metal. There wasn't reinforcements. It wasn't cheap metal. It wasn't recycled metal. Basically, the car rusted out or was slightly rusty. Just ground it down and to the bare steel, and the steel panels that these cars were constructed from were a lot more sturdy. And because there wasn't all the safety reinforcements of the cars in the late 60s till current day, the car was pretty light. I took that car to the grain elevator, which has a large scale that they weighed the grain trucks on, and weighed it. And that car weighed as much as a subcompact Dodge Omni from the 80s. So, for relative strength, and if the car is souped up, the car is going to fly because they had a 3-speed on the floor. And I could damn near beat anything with that car that was in the neighborhood, as far as my competing teenagers. So that's something to take into consideration for the street rods. Now, one of the great eras of cars was the muscle cars. And let's talk 2 categories of that. A lot of the older cars that were street rods were souped up and chopped down, and the bodies were modified, and they were turned into muscle car hot rods. And there was a lot of cars manufactured from, uh, I'd say, from the early 60s until the late 70s. Okay, and that was the great muscle car era. And basically, let's divide this up into early 60s and then late 60s and 70s. So the early 60s, you're going to find a lot of evolution from what the 50s street rod looked like to the 60s, and the engines got bigger and bigger. All right. Also in the mid 60s, that's when they started reinforcing cars using cheaper metal and stuff like that. Now come the late 60s into the, about 1975, the cars got bigger, the engines got huge, and you'd see 454s in there, Olds 442s. The cubic inch of the engines got a lot bigger. Before, basically, the average hot rod had a 350 long block or short block in it. So that late era, I think the late 60s, early 70s, those cars would make probably some of the best battle cars and some of the fastest too. We're talking about your Superbirds, your Super Bs, your Novas, your Chevelle SSs, Galaxy 500s, just these huge battle barge of the cars. Now, one thing, the handling from those cars compared to today's is just absolutely crappy. All right, there's just no comparison to a Dodge Challenger that was made back then and a Dodge Challenger that was made in the last 10 years. So that's something to take into consideration for your stats, that the handling's not going to be that great, but the flat out open is going to be good. And these cars will be needed to be armored up. All right, so the next consideration would be the cars of the 80s. A lot of these are mid-size and sub-pack cars. And for as far as the toy manufacturers, what you're going to see is a lot of cars that were used for rally racing. So they're going to have, they're lightweight and still quick because, the car being incredibly lightweight and having a souped up even 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder engine in it is still going to be good. But on the flat open, the late 60, 70 cars are going to beat it. But in the initial get up and go, those cars are going to be a lot faster and they're going to have better handling. Those cars are basically used for rally racing, which is kind of driving through urban and suburban and rural environments with a lot of curves and things like that. So they got the handleability down good. Another set of cars to consider is the late 80s, early 90s, and to current days performance American cars. So we're talking the Corvettes, the Mustangs, the Dodge Challengers. Today, the souped up cars, they outstrip their counterparts in speed and maneuverability compared to the cars from the late 60s, early 70s. So they probably are the best option for us, like speed and handleability, but they're made out of, the metal's a lot more inferior. There's a lot more plastic in the actual cars, so they probably wouldn't be as well defended. And you'll have to armor those suckers up too. Also, all through those decades, the Euro sports cars, especially the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, and stuff like that, those are super ultra performance cars, and they're going to blow away a lot of the American cars except for special models. So probably the fastest thing on the board should be your European performance cars, and some of the American cars can go into that spectrum. So those are all considerations that you should do to adjust your stats if you want to play a more realistic type of battle. Now, another thing too is you can use all these different cars in one group, or you can do themes. So I'm kind of thinking about doing a late 60s, early 70s hot rod theme. I thought about doing a military theme, but it just seems too easy to put tanks and stuff on there. And I'm also going to make one team that's basically just built to win, trying to select the best things from all the different eras. And, it'd be cool to do, here's the themes you could do as far as just like manufacture. You can do street rods, rally cars, muscle cars, performance American cars, and performance European cars. So those are all things to take into consideration when thinking about doing a theme. So that was just a little bit of things that I was thinking about as far as Gaslands to consider. And I'll make a few more videos when I get the game right and start building the different guns and things like that. I want to thank you guys for watching this video, and please like and subscribe, and you have a great one.